afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Tuesday, May 31st, 2022. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you about my co-host. Do you know what, folks? Today is National Autonomous Vehicle Day. But my friend, well, she would never be caught dead with a kinder, gentler howl within the dashboard of her Jeep. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. Hey, how you doing there, Sheila?
David, I'm doing great. I don't know if it's like this for the viewer out there, but is my hair taking up a lot of frame today? Like, it's a lot.
That's quite the do. I'm digging it, though. I like it.
I didn't do anything different. I didn't touch it. It just has its own life of its own.
But you know what? All you need with that hairdo, Sheila, is pointy ears, and you are a Romulan commander. Star Trek.
Yeah, I know, but weren't the Romulans Russians? Like, wasn't that who they were supposed to be in the grand scheme of things? Like, the Romulans were the Russians, and then the Klingons, were they the Chinese?
I think it might be the reverse.
Could be the reverse, yeah. Anyway, that Khaleesi name is catching on because, as I told you in the company Slack channel, I was walking in to pick my daughter up from rugby tryouts on Sunday, and it's over, and there's like 100 parents leaving the parking lot, cars leaving the parking lot, and I'm walking right in, and I do have a distinctive look, right? Like, obviously, and I'm usually wearing plaid, so I'm not hard to identify, but somebody leans out of his van window and screams, "Khaleesi!" And I
love
turn
it.
around, and he's driving away, and then everybody looks at me because they don't understand why this man is screaming at me out the window.
I love it.
Anyway, thanks.
You're famous, Sheila, and you deserve to be. And hey, you are the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. I would take a bullet for you as long as I was wearing a bulletproof vest. Anyway, and by the way, we have lots to talk about. Speaking of bullets,
we have
about
lots
guns.
to talk about.
Yeah.
Yes, and I can't go long because I have a couple of things to do, like that are like hard outs, as they say in the industry, that I have to be somewhere at a certain time. So we can't go too long today. But yeah, we're going to talk about Trudeau's gun ban and the crazy things the progressive hellscape of Edmonton is doing. Escape from that place while you can, Edmontonians. It's only getting worse. And I didn't know it could get worse. Like, I thought Edmonton was bad already, but no. Continues to get worse with gross, crazy ideas. But I should tell everybody what we're doing before we get to that.
Indeed, I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, but I see that we do have a City of Edmonton story, a bridge being painted red, and folks, you won't believe the reason why it's being painted red. So stay tuned for that.
Edmonton, you are the worst.
It's not to warn approaching aircraft that there's a piece of infrastructure in the way towards the airport. It's for something completely different. You're never going to believe it.
District 9, Edmonton. Just build a fence, keep the aliens inside. We'll drop cat food in for them. But everybody wants to leave. You could just go. Anyways, this is the Rebel News daily live stream. And we are currently streaming on YouTube. However, there may come a time in the show where we have to cut the YouTube feed because YouTube is a censorship platform, and there are certain things that you cannot say over there. For example, you cannot question election integrity. You can't question the advice of a public health officer, even though public health officers change their minds so often based on political science and often nothing else. But to get around the censorship of YouTube, we're also streaming on Getter, which is a great free speech social media platform, but we're also over on Rumble, Odyssey, and Super U. And the beauty of Rumble, Odyssey, and Super U is that those platforms, well, first of all, it's beautiful because they don't care about your politics and we don't care about theirs, but they also give you the opportunity to support the work that we do completely willingly, but also to interact with each other live on air. So if you leave a Rumble rant, that's their paid chat. We'll read it on air. We'll react to your comment. If you leave us a Super U shout, that's their paid chat. Again, we'll read that on air. And Odyssey is a hyper chat. And there's a couple different ways to leave us one of those. And that's how you can interact with us. We'll read it on air. And it helps fill up the war chest of Rebel News so that we continue to do the important work that the mainstream media refuses to.
I see Isabel just came in to do the show 5 minutes late, of course, but we'll let that go.
Whoa, David, whoa.
No, I'm a little peeved because, Isabel, I love Isabel. She's a wonderful camera woman, but I always ask her for 7 numbers for whenever Lotto Max gets to 70 million, which is really, and she gave me another 7, Sheila, and unlike last time in which 0 out of 7 came through, 1 out of 7 came through, which means it's a worthless piece of paper. And remember, she gets a sage green Mini Cooper and a house in the beach. That's the high rent district, folks, if she can supply me with the correct 7 numbers. But I'm the guy fronting the show here, and it's just not working. Not even a free ticket.
I checked out like 30 seconds ago. I have no idea what you just said, but I know that you were telling the world how absolutely cheap you are. Right?
What?
Was that what was happening?
She contributes $0.00 to the ticket and stands to get, what is a house in the beach, Isabel? Probably the average price is $2 million. And the sage green Mini Cooper. By the way, that's a special order color, okay? So, yeah.
Isabel contributed the intellectual property of potential winning numbers, and that is worth something.
All I'm asking for is the right numbers, and she gets a free win, a free ride, a gravy train with, what do you call it? Biscuit wheels.
Biscuit wheels. Gravy train with biscuit wheels.
But she has a chance to redeem herself. This is the last time. It's 3 strikes and you're out in my book. So she's dredging up some 7 new numbers, and we should move on.
Speaking what do you want to talk dredging
about? We teased the idea of this red bridge.
Okay, let's talk about the bridge because it's stupid, and then we'll talk about Justin Trudeau because he's stupid. And Liberals did several stupid things yesterday. So let's get to stupidity closer to home. City of Edmonton. You are insane. The bridge, this is the high-level bridge. So this is a bridge that they change the colors on, the lights on, depending on what's happening in the world. I think it was lit up for in Ukrainian colors, which actually makes sense. This is a very Ukrainian part of the world. As many Ukrainians live here. This is the largest of people of Ukrainian descent in the world outside of Ukraine and Russia is here. So that makes sense, even though it's kind of virtue signaling, like, great, you lit up the bridge. War's over, I guess. But, they'll light it up rainbow for Pride Week, Parade Month, however long that goes on for. Sometimes they might light it up for Trans Visibility Day. They might light it up for Oilers, the playoffs or whatever. Let's go back to this This is something I don't think any woman I ever met asked for, but here we are. The bridge will be lit in red for Menstrual Health Day. Okay. Why?
Well, I was going to ask you that, Sheila, given that I don't have to worry about this bodily function.
Yeah. And then it's this is fantastic to see more stories of how Albertans are addressing period poverty. Click here. It never ends. I don't know. I joke and it's gross, but maybe they should have dyed the river red for this. That would make more sense than the bridge at the end of the day. But who asked for this? What and why? You're driving past the bridge and then you got to stop and explain to your kids or whatever why the bridge is red. I don't know a single woman who's like, you know what, my life would be so much easier as a woman. All the problems facing women in the world would be solved if that bridge were just lit up red.
Wait a minute, Sheila. You're making a fatal assumption here, I think, when you say woman. Aren't they putting menstrual products into male bathrooms in some school systems right now in case they identify as being a woman, and therefore, I don't know, do they have a pretend period? Is that what they do? Because no matter how much you will it, it's not going to happen if you're a dude.
Maybe someone can dig it up. I think it was the BC government 2 days ago or something. They ran up against this, and I think it was about pregnant people or breastfeeding people or lactating persons or chest feeders or whatever they call women these days. They had tweeted something about this, and people were like, yeah, no, that's not how that works. It's women that you're talking about, and you shouldn't be scared to say women. Like, this is the new misogyny. This is erasing women. This is erasing women. Before they said we couldn't do anything, and now they're saying that we can do certain things, but a man can do them too. Like, you know, have a baby, breastfeed, or menstruate. And it's just, you know, like people say, you know, like you need places for women, but the feminists, these third or fourth wave feminists, whatever wave we're in now, it's like COVID, the feminists just keep coming. But whatever it is, they're completely erased women. They've made us obsolete. You know, like they're just going to have sex robots and menstruating men, and we don't exist anymore.
And when you see tangible damage to females occurring, it is in the realms, I would say, Sheila, of elite sports, where male athletes are welcomed with open arms by most of the sports governing bodies. You see here in Canada, thanks to a Justin Trudeau promise when queried by a trans activist, to allow men to, criminals that is, to serve their time in female penitentiary simply for saying they are female. And, you know, I wonder, you know, it's going to backfire. I mean, it's already backfiring.
Sure
Men are cleaning up in the realm of sports. Women are being harassed and even raped in prisons because these are not females. These are fully functioning males. And, you know, I got to tell you, here's something our friend Terry at the Daily Wanker sent me this today, Sheila, because it was canceled evidently for 2 years due to COVID. But the woman-only naked swim for Body Brave, I don't know what Body Brave is. Well, it's splashing back on June 5th at the Dundas Community Pool in Hamilton. I'm wondering, Sheila, when these members of the radical trans community show up at the Dundas Community Pool with their full wedding tackle on display, are they going to be told, no, you're not a woman? Because we even have a Supreme Court justice south of the border who can't define what a woman is. So if this Body Brave event turns into a sausage fest, well, ladies, I'm sorry. You allowed this. You enabled this. I don't see the feminist movement taking a strong stand against radical transgenderism, which, like you said, Sheila, is now all about misogyny, a hatred towards biological females.
Can we just go back to this thing here? This Body Brave thing? I can't believe this is a real thing. Can we just take a look at that? Please? I'm horrified. Because swimming pools weird me out a little bit, especially hot tubs where it's like, okay, there's this thin layer of spandex and we're just sitting in a pool of tepid filth of other people's body. Like, other people have been just, I don't know, simmering in this water, and you're going to get into it too. I don't know, no amount of chlorine. By
the way, Sheila, sorry to interrupt, but that is indeed where I met Lady Menzoid back in 1988, the day before Valentine's Day, in a hot tub.
Just in a big Menzies soup, just percolating, simmering away. Anyways, a naked swim at a public pool, unsuitable, you say? Yeah, well, right, in the literal sense. If you're wearing a bathing suit, you will forfeit your eligibility to participate. But then again, it's not about the rules. It's about breaking them. The rules of often repressive social convention. I love social conventions. They're the best. And breaking them gently, peacefully, wetly. Oh, I just want to gag in my mouth. What a fun way to raise awareness for a serious issue. The Naked Swim for Women, originally titled Love the Skin You're In, is now in its 7th year. 7 years? Why do people feel the need to be nude in public? Why? I don't even like to wear shorts. Anyways, treading water, floating in place. Naked Swim for a Cause. What's the cause? I don't understand.
Just Body Brave. So that sounds like a Jill Andrew thing, and maybe later on we can throw to that. She's the MPP for Toronto St. Paul. She's a queer, black, fat activist, and she's involved in some sort of organization too, which celebrates obesity or something like that. But go on, Sheila.
I just don't understand. This has been going on for 7 years, and I don't understand what problem this solves except some weird fetishist's desire to have the municipal government support their weird fetish. Is that what I'm getting here?
You know what? I think so. I mean, if you really see, I've never understood nudism.
Thank you.
These people going to nudist colonies, but if that's what you want to do, and it's roped off and it's out of sight,
I don't think the municipal government should be involved.
Exactly.
Go be a wandering nude weirdo in the bushes somewhere. Not my business. I hope you wear bug spray. But I don't think that the municipal government should be providing you a swimming pool for you and your naked buddies to be frolicking around. I just think it's weird.
And by the way, Olivia, can we go back to that story? Can we see the photograph of the adherents?
No.
I think you made my point. And
no.
by the way,
it's
Sheila,
never who you wish you could see naked. It's always like,
well, well said. But here's the thing, Sheila. If this is all about some form of female empowerment, and by the way, going back to 1995, the Gwen Jacob decision at Superior Court, women do have the right, at least in Ontario, to walk around topless. So you don't have to worry about a ticket. But this is also bottomless, which really nobody has the right to do. Here's the thing. If the Hamilton Spectator thinks this is such a great idea and that, this is down with the revolution and this is females letting it all hang out and that empowers them, then why is the photo of those two swimmers for Sunday, why are they concealed behind a blanket? Why doesn't the Hamilton Spectator put it all out there, man, if they think, look, come on. I mean, do you see what I'm getting at, Sheila? A bit of hypocrisy here. This is great, but, not for the eyes of our readers, mind you. What a bunch of hypocrisy.
And just wait till the men try to get involved claiming to be women. Just wait. It's going to happen. It always does. There's a lot of Jesus take the wheel in the first 15 minutes of the show here today, but I did find that thing from the BC government about this is, again, BC government virtue signaling, just like the city of Edmonton is. People facing financial difficulties can struggle for access to menstrual products and risk missing out on work, social events, and daily life. We're contributing to the United Way to help find ways to provide people the access to the products they need. Except it's not people, it's women.
See, they can't even say the
W
word.
They can't even say it.
It is, and didn't Theresa Tam, wasn't she guilty of this in a tweet last year as well? And I know, Sheila, that the Green movement, I remember a story years ago, I don't know if this is a thing, I don't know if it's caught on with anyone, but they were talking about reusable menstrual products. And I'm not making this up.
It's out there, David. It's out there. You're just not. I mean, I can't imagine that your finger's on the pulse of these things, but it's out there and it's a huge trend. And a huge
trend? Wow. So is that a solution to period poverty that you would reuse the stuff?
Do you know what? Can we just talk about something else? I'm going to jump out of my skin here.
You brought this up.
I just wanted to bring it up because the city of Edmonton is awful, and I feel sorry for the people who live there and pay their taxes to the city of Edmonton for this kind of stuff. But I am just ready to jump right out of my skin and just move on to something else. So let's talk about... Sorry,
and by the way, if you have to say to your children as you drive by the bridge all lit up in red, and they say, "Mommy or Daddy, why is it lit up in red?" Say that it's for Team Canada winning the silver medal at the World Hockey.
I'm going to tell my kids it's red because Edmonton is a bunch of commies. That's why, and we'll move on from there.
Okay,
because the city is full of communists. Anyway, let's move on to Justin Trudeau's travel ban. He's upheld it. The Liberals did. And there's some problems with the voting, it sounds like. Not enough to sway the issue, but enough to disenfranchise some MPs who wanted to vote a certain way, and isn't that convenient? But yesterday, Melissa Lantsman, Conservative MP, brought forward a motion to try to end the vaccine mandates for train and air travel. And the NDP voted to prop up the Liberals in their bad discriminatory ideas, and her motion was voted down. So even though the Liberal government has never gathered any information about whether or not these vaccine mandates are effective, they've never bothered to track any outbreaks that did or didn't occur on planes or trains, they are still keeping these things in place. So nays were 202 and yays were 117. Now, there are 119, I think, Conservative MPs. One high-profile one could not vote because he said he couldn't get on to cast his vote, and that was Pierre Poilievre. He was out campaigning, I think, in Northern Ontario, and he did try to vote. He was not able to. Again, it's not enough to sway the votes because the progressive parties continue to prop up Justin Trudeau in his discrimination while claiming to be about human rights. But this is Pierre Poilievre's response because people are saying, you know, you didn't vote. Why did you? They were saying he abstained. He absolutely did not abstain. And I'm not in the bag for Pierre Poilievre. I generally don't like politicians at all. But he says, I oppose the unscientific vaccine mandates. I oppose them from day one, and I will oppose them until they are all removed. I attempted to vote for Melissa Lantsman's motion ending all COVID travel restrictions. I was voting remotely as I was in Thunder Bay, but the voting application did not register my vote as a result of a technical problem. I will be raising a point of order to alert the Speaker to the issue and asking for my vote to be properly counted as favoring the end of these rules.
You know, Sheila, I thought I had some faint hope that this might pass, and I'll tell you why. There is so much outrage at what is happening right now at airports across the country. I mean, Pearson being the absolute worst, and the stats don't make sense. For example, the travel volume at Pearson is only 70% of what it was in 2019, pre-COVID. And yet they are blaming this on a staff shortage, but the staff shortage...
Yeah, but also don't fire your CBSA officers or lay them off or whatever it is, put them on unpaid leave.
Exactly.
Because they didn't get vaccinated.
But even, you know, having said that, Sheila, their staff shortage is 10%. So they're at 90% levels for staffing, but only 70% in terms of actual air travelers at Pearson. So compared on a per capita basis to 2019, they're actually overstaffed. And yet these horrible delays are still occurring. And it is getting all kinds of blowback, even from some on the left, that are saying, this is crazy. I'm missing connecting flights. I'm going to the airport 4 hours in advance, and it's I'm getting aboard the plane in the nick of time. The prodding, the probe, the showing the documents, the random COVID tests. Why? And I thought this might be a convenient way of the government, not because they're doing the right thing, but to answer the deluge of negative publicity on this, to say, yeah, you know what, it's time to join the rest of the world and roll back these measures. But my God, are they stubborn. And again, they just use it for virtue signaling. We're doing this for your protection, Canadians. What a joke.
Yeah, just like the gun ban, which we'll get to in a second. They're doing it for my protection. I can't believe that they didn't factor in that all this additional screening, the random temperature checks and all that garbage, that wouldn't add literally hours to security screening. And then the short staffing. So even if they were at 100% staffing capacity, they have all this other stupid stuff, this public health theater going on down at the airport, that, you know, you'd have to overstaff to deal with that. And yet, technically speaking, they're kind of understaffed.
And that's the thing too, Sheila, as I understand from travel consultants, if you have all your paperwork perfectly filled out and on display, on demand, the process should take 30 seconds. But if something is not there, it's going to take closer to 2.5 minutes. Now, 2.5 minutes, you might say big deal. Oh, it is a big deal when there's like hundreds of people behind you, because 2.5 plus 2.5, now you're up to 5, and then 10, and so on and so forth. And that's why you're seeing delays in the hours. It's completely unacceptable for no good reason whatsoever. But again, it's Big Brother watching out for our air travel safety, Sheila.
Well, and we talked about it, Adam and I talked about it yesterday. And again, I'm just getting dangerously close to getting us to having to cut the YouTube feed. But tell me how you can be in public transportation. You can go to a hockey game, an Oilers game, not a Flames game anymore. Not that I'm cheering for any of them, but you can go wait in line, get your tickets, go to this building where you're shoulder to shoulder with other hockey fans. That's fine, but you can't get on a plane with other Canadians too. Like, you could go to a hockey game with all the same people that are on your airplane.
Yep.
But you can't get on that airplane unless you're vaccinated. And I didn't think that the Liberals would have a come to Jesus moment on this, because we had that order paper story the other day where over the next 2 years, it's in excess of 200 million doses of vaccines are that the Liberals have committed to buying. And these are they expire. So the intent is to use them or force us to use them by keeping these mandates in place. And there is no uptake on the vaccines outside of people who, at this point are sick of being locked in their homes.
So, Sheila, given what you say is true, at arenas and stadia, people are being packed in, sold right out, standing room only.
Yeah.
What is the official reason by the Trudeau Liberals why airports are a different animal somehow?
Oh, they're keeping us safe. That's what they say. They're keeping us safe. They don't have to address that. They just say they're keeping us safe. And they're so happy that, Mother Government is clutching her Canadian children into her warm and heaving bosom of safety. That's what we're supposed to believe, while the government strips away our rights. This is time immemorial. This is what governments do. They take away your rights under the guise of public safety. They've identified the unvaccinated as the boogeyman in all of this, and we're going to make sure that you sweet, innocent Canadians are not exposed to these devilish boogeymen who won't listen to the government. And at the end of the day, that's what this comes down to. These are people who would not be brought to heel in front of the altar of the state. And so they need to be punished. But now everybody else is getting punished too through these enormous wait times.
It's amazing. I just wish somebody would buy Justin Trudeau and Omar Alghabra a calendar that indicates we're halfway through 2022. We're not at the beginning of 2020, when we legitimately didn't know a lot that we now know about COVID-19. There's no reason for this anymore. And again, it's political theater, isn't it, Sheila? Safety, virtue signaling for the sake of safety, virtue signaling. Unbelievable. But speaking of safety, well, I see you can't be too safe if you're a Justin Trudeau Liberal, right, Sheila? Because they want to take away our guns for our safety, you understand.
Yeah, the Justin Trudeau's government yesterday announced a pause on sales and importation of handguns. Well, handguns are like the most highly regulated firearm in the country. You have to have a special level of licensing to use them, and you can only use them at designated gun ranges. Lawful owners of these things have to call the government for permission before you take it out of your gun safe and go directly to the range and then come straight home. That is, if you follow the law. And this only comes at people who follow the law, but it also serves to do something else. Besides Justin Trudeau, between now and the fall, whatever that means, that's the time frame he gave on this. We're going to bring this in the fall. He becomes Canada's best firearm salesman, because every time I see something like this, I'm like, oh, what kind of disposable cash do I have? I'm skipping off down to the gun store to buy ammo and firearms before the government knows what I have. And that's the thing too, is because these are handguns, the government already knows what you have. So if to buy and sell these things, it all has to go in front of the eyeballs of the government anyway. So they know who the lawful gun owners are. So if they want to confiscate these things, they can already do that. It's the problem here is that attacking once again lawful Canadian gun owners doesn't do anything to address the rising gang violence in Canadian cities. So in May 2020, Justin Trudeau brought in the firearms ban on 1,500 popular models of Canadian firearms and shotguns, including a 410 bird gun, which would only be dangerous to you if you were a robin. I think a seagull might survive, and a 22. But he describes these things as military style, so that if you are a know-nothing, this would naturally scare you. But
and Sheila, sorry,
in those 2 years, though, crime has gone up.
Yeah. And that's a very important point. And because you are a gun owner and pretty much a gun expert, I want you to explain what Trudeau is trying to say or trying to infer or imply here when he talks about, quote, military-style assault firearms, end quote. Because I remember going out to Mississauga, I think it was a year ago, and interviewing a guy that runs an airsoft business. And these are just airsoft rifles, and some of them look like military-style assault firearms, but like you said, it's not even going to kill a bird. So is this a scare tactic on his behalf to those, I guess, Canadian urbanites that don't know anything about guns?
Yes, that's exactly it. Is if he can convince enough Canadians who are well-meaning but uninformed, I don't want to say ignorant, but this is just not something they know about. Mm-hmm. If he can convince them that there are military style assault rifles in the hands of Canadians, that's pretty scary. Yeah. But when Justin Trudeau says military style assault rifle, what he means is things that look cool, because even the AR was not developed for military use. I wouldn't use that to hunt a deer. I don't think it's powerful enough. And that was something that was restricted so that you could only use it at the range. You couldn't be shooting that in your backyard. And I don't want to give the Liberals any ideas, but there are high-powered rifles that people use for hunting that are far more dangerous and powerful than handguns and some of these other rifles and firearms like the aforementioned 410 bird gun or the AR. But it's because the Liberals want to be perceived to be doing something about gun crime, that they continue to go after lawful Canadian gun owners. They don't want to deal with the thing that is causing the rise in crime. Yeah. And that is the open border, because a lot of these guns that are ending up in the hands of gangbangers in Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver, those are coming across the porous Canadian border. And what I do know about the Liberals is that they know how to put up fences. They put them up in Ottawa and they left them up to keep law-abiding Canadian anti-mandate protesters out of their own nation's capital. But we can't put up a fence at Roxham Road and some of these other places where guns and fentanyl are coming into our country to take Canadian lives. Therein lies the problem. But there is something about this Liberal grasp on, there are two things that Liberals love, and that's being the place of free universal health care where we all die in the same wait line, and having the longest undefended border. And they will brag about that to the detriment and public safety of Canadians in their cities. Instead of dealing with that, they will come after people like me who jump through all the hoops we need to every single day. And even worse, they do this on the backs of women. They say, we're doing this to deal with gender-based violence. Well, how does that help me if you take away the great equalizer from me? And I'm a good half an hour from the next police station. So what, I have to just assume the guy who breaks into my property is just some benevolent guy who's just here to take my TV and not my life? But, you know, and another point I want to make here, and it occurred to me yesterday in discussions with Adam, I'm not, I don't think, trusting enough of the police to offload my public safety onto them. If we learned anything about what happened in Texas, that even when the police are there, even when they're armed to the teeth, even when they're wearing flak jackets, they will fail you. And so I'm, as a Canadian woman, the Liberals say they're doing this to protect me by what? Taking away the thing that can even the score with the burglar, the rapist, the murderer. And what? I've got to rely on police who seem to be failing when lives are at risk. It's absolutely ridiculous. And one last point, sorry. The stranded assets for these gun retailers.
Oh.
These guys are mom and pop shops. It's not Cabela's. Cabela's is going to be fine. It's not Canadian Tire. They're going to be fine too. It's the local guys. It's the gun store in Bashaw that everybody loves. And you can order in all kinds of weird parts and stuff for you. It's that guy who's going to end up with tens of thousands of dollars in stranded assets that he cannot sell. And this will be devastating to them.
And the worst thing of all, Sheila, when this ban, and I'm sure there'll be future bans, are applied, can you possibly show me one single tangible example of this ban preventing a murder in our cities with the gangbangers and the criminals? No. I mean, because here's the thing, Justin Trudeau, you can ban all these guns all you want, but criminals by definition don't follow the law. They break the law. That's what makes them criminals. And
do you think the gangsters are going through the same RPEL courses as people like me? You think they're calling ahead to the CFO, the chief firearms officer, and saying, you know, I'd like to take my illegally obtained firearm from underneath my car seat and take it to the local playground and just spray some bullets around. Is that cool? Thanks. But people like me, I have to say, okay, well, I want to take my handgun to the range. This is my RPEL number. You know where my range is. I'll be there. I'll be coming straight home. That's what people like me have to do. But do you think the gangsters are doing that with their guns that are coming across the border? You know, any number of just the porous Canadian border where you just walk stuff across the border. But people are walking across. You think guns aren't walking across? It's insane.
And just look what the numbers say, Sheila. I believe it's 86%. It might be 83%. I know it's in the 80 percentile of guns that are used in crime are illegal guns.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So how does this theater, how does this virtue signaling address that? It doesn't. It's going to be business as usual for the criminals.
And you know what? This is something that wins and loses elections for Conservatives, by the way. Flip-flopping on this issue, on the 1,500 models of firearms, one of the reasons Conservatives en masse abandoned Aaron O'Toole.
Yep.
Because he said it was undemocratic and didn't make any sense public safety-wise. But then, instead of trying to communicate to suburban Torontonians and saying, well, this is why it won't work, and this is why we shouldn't come after this section of the Canadian populace. This is why we shouldn't be blaming them for the problems in your cities. Instead of sticking up for them, he agreed with the Liberals on that. And this continues to be undemocratic because this will be done once again through an order in council. So changing regulations of an existing law because the Liberals cannot produce any evidence that any of this will work at the end of the day. There was one more point that I wanted to make about this. The reason I think this wins and loses elections for Conservatives are the numbers. The shooting sports, they're more Canadian than hockey. And because firearms owners are constantly subject to bans, confiscations, because Liberals just change their minds about guns depending on the day of the week. In May, we had 2 new gun laws and one included a registry. Like, you know, so we don't like to talk about our guns because we never know what the government's going to do to us. But by the numbers, more Canadians are sports shooters than play hockey. There are 2.1 million licensed gun owners. And conversely, there are 1.2 million Canadians who play organized hockey.
You know, I did not know that. That's an amazing statistic. So, and yet I would imagine, Sheila, this is an example of the two solitudes. And by that I mean in urban Canada, guns probably aren't a big thing. But when you go out to rural Canada, it very much is a big thing. And you just recited the numbers. So this isn't, to use Justin Trudeau language, the fringe using guns. These are over 2 million people. And to go attack them, and I want to address something you said earlier too, to make this somehow a woman's issue, because he is our first feminist prime minister, as you know, Sheila. You gave a great example. I know you live remotely. You live far from emergency services. The idea that this is a woman's issue by taking your weaponry away, if, God forbid, anyone went to your residence to do you harm, this is not a woman's issue. It's an anti-woman's issue in my book.
Yeah, of course it is. Even just on the property rights issue, it's an anti-woman issue. It's an anti-Canadian issue. How is it feminist to be stripping away the lawfully obtained property of Canadian women in the same way that the government is stripping it away from men? Yeah. They say that they want women to break barriers, and then when women get interested in the shooting sports, they come and take our guns away. It's absolutely outrageous. But just even the data doesn't play out. Justin Trudeau, 2 years ago, banned 1,500 models of firearms.
Yep.
Gun crime has continued to go up.
Yep.
Consistently for 2 years. So it's not the firearms of lawful Canadian gun owners. It's something else. But instead of addressing that, because it means closing the border, he continues to go back to the well that continues to comply.
And Sheila, here's my view. If you are caught with an illegal handgun in your backpack or your pocket.
God help you.
Yeah. I think it should be 10 years. No negotiation. That's your sentence. Automatic. It's an illegal handgun. You're not registered with it. 10 years in the slammer. Yeah, look at some of the most recent Supreme Court decisions we're seeing, that even for a mass murderer to be held indefinitely without parole is called cruel and unusual punishment. Cruel and unusual punishment. Not the victims that lost their lives, folks, but the gunmen. That's the worldview of our Supremes right now. So we're going easy, I think, on the most horrific people in society, i.e. those that commit first-degree murder, while going on a jihad against Saskatchewan duck hunters? Are you kidding me?
I can give you another example of this. And I think, by and large, Canadian gun owners, the gun-owning community, we say throw the book at these guys.
Yep.
Throw the book at them.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about paper crime, somebody who has been consistently licensed and then their license lapsed and they're in that gray area when they're trying to renew, but you can't because the government is terrible. It takes sometimes like 9 months to renew, and they say, renew a couple months in advance, whatever. I'm not talking about paper crimes or, like you wake up one morning and you wake up to find out the government banned your guns, and then all of a sudden you're in possession of illegal guns. That's a paper crime. That's different. Jonathan Jessica Yaniv Simpson with a taser, brandishing a taser on a live stream. That is akin, under Canadian law, to not being licensed to own a firearm, particularly a restricted firearm. That's a prohibited firearm.
Correct.
That's a prohibited weapon in the same classification as owning something fully automatic. And yet, that person brandishes it on a live stream. It should not be owning it, and it is illegal to, what do they call it? Conductive energy devices. They're illegal for civilian use in Canada. Brandishes it on a live stream. You know what that person gets? Basically a suspended sentence, a conditional discharge, keep the peace and be of good behavior, which that person has not. And that record goes away. Now, if that were me brandishing, let's say, a Tavor or an Uzi, which is sort of in the same category, you would never see me again. I would be in jail. I wouldn't be able to own guns. My kids probably wouldn't be able to own guns. Generations of my people would be banned from owning guns. And yet, because we treat certain people different and certain things different in society, this conductive energy device, and we can claim all kinds of whatever in front of a judge. But someone like me, I'd have the book thrown at me.
Yeah, it's an identity politics decision, Sheila. I mean, going back to 2019 when I was assaulted at the condominium complex, 5 shots on my head and shoulders with a steel cane. And the police came, the RCMP that is. And it was one of the most brutal examples of policing I ever saw, where the officer said, well, if we charge him, we have to charge you. I go, why? Harassment. Harassment. I'm on public property asking questions. And yet I believe if that was just some random dude, there would be an arrest, and it wouldn't be, well, if we charge him, we have to charge. That would go out the window. So identity politics has to be part of that issue, I think. Oh, here we are. Ooh, oh. I still remember this. And there's Mama Yaniv, who used her iPad, I always get those mixed up, to jam it into my Adam's apple as Junior was slashing me over the head with the cane. Unbelievable. But, yeah, the idea, I think, Sheila, that, the iconic image of Lady Justice holding the scales blindfolded. Well, these days, Lady Justice is wearing X-ray glasses, right? Yeah, oh, yeah. But you know what? I know we're up against a hard out with you today, so maybe we should get to our Super Chats before we run out of time.
Yes, let's do that. Oh, some of these statements from Justin Trudeau, I don't care about doctors and experts. What experts are those that are calling for these gun bans? I'm sorry, but unless I see that doctor down at the shooting range, I'm not taking his advice on firearms.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I'm just not. By the way, some of those police who are at the gun range that I see at the gun range, you guys are terrible shots. You couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and I'm supposed to rely on you guys to keep me safe?
I've heard that, Sheila, because, from others, and I know some, Toronto shooters, and they've said words to the same effect. And I think there's an assumption on the public, and I was part of it, where I assume that everybody in law enforcement is a crack shot, but not necessarily so.
No, and most of them are not, not most of them, but what I do know is some of them are not outside of their service weapon. They don't have a gun license. So to have your service weapon to be, I think it's RCMP, but it's probably the same with city cops. You actually don't have to go through the process of getting a PAL or an RPAL. It's a different thing. So they don't even know sometimes what lawful Canadian gun owners go through, what our level of training is, what the tests we have to pass are. They don't know because they've never gone through it themselves.
That's weird.
It is weird. Okie doke. So today, GGFD, $10.
Thank you.
Says $10 for Rebel News and $50 going to the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms for Peckford versus Trudeau court case. Natural immunity for the win. Adam Ottawa gives us $1. Didn't the transport minister try blaming rusty air travelers for the backlog in airports? Didn't the feds have 2 years to make sure security is staffed? Shameful. Yeah, I saw that. He tried to say you guys are just out of practice. You guys don't know how to use airports anymore.
Pre-COVID, air travel, thanks to 9/11, was already so horrific. The probing and prodding and the lineups, but now with this, theater that they're doing in the name of safety, it is horrific on steroids. And for the minister to blame the victims, that tells you a lot about the Justin Trudeau government, I should think.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They continue to blame the victims. You know what? We're just experiencing the airports differently than the Liberals.
Unbelievable.
AMT60 gives us $1. Trudeau and Singh love to be dictators by keeping the travel mandates. Also introducing a new law that new people can't buy handguns makes me want to learn how to shoot and apply for a gun license. This is what I'm saying. Every time the Liberals are like, we're bringing in a new gun law, nothing gets me skipping off to the gun store, something like that. Yeah. And I know that I don't feel alone in this. And again, it will make no difference. People will continue to be murdered at the hands of illegal guns in Canada's big cities because the Liberals refuse to do the thing that they need to do because, I don't know, it's unpopular because Canadian gun owners don't vote for them, I guess. Maybe that's why. It's low liability for them. They play on the lack of knowledge of Canadian urbanites, and they punish the people who will never vote for them anyway.
And Sheila, I forgot to ask you a hypothetical question going back to our discussion on the gun ban, and it's this. Whoever is the leader of the Conservative Party come September 10th, what do you think their position will be on this issue?
Oh, I'm sure it'll be a complete and total repeal, but there also has to be changes to how we deal with this stuff. You cannot be outlawing people from owning the things they already own through the stroke of a pen behind closed doors. Yeah. They're gonna do it because the Liberals and the NDP have this, alliance, this allegiance, sorry, I shouldn't call it an alliance. I should call it an axis. But they have that. And so they're going to pass these laws anyways. But at least go through the motions of looking democratic.
Yeah.
And having to present your arguments for this kind of stuff. But they don't. They just go behind closed doors. They're like, yeah, write in this regulation into C71 and let's call it a day. Yeah. And millions of people now have stranded assets.
Despicable.
Anyway, it is despicable. Adam Ottawa gives us a buck. Attorney General report out today showing that the Libs didn't meet any of their election promises to veterans. Shameful. O'Regan was Trudeau's first veterans minister. Coincidence? I used to say that he was the dumbest MP in Ottawa.
I know. But
there are so many. Yeah, there's so many giving him a run for his money these days. Like Aljabra, he's really dumb. Yeah. Who is the public safety minister? Mendocino, I think. Bill Blair, yeah. He's extra stupid. Mendocino's he's really dumb though. Yeah.
The minister of lying is Mendocino, right?
Yeah, he's the minister of make 'em up. Yeah. He just, he's like, yeah, the cops asked for us to seize all those assets and bank accounts, and the Ottawa cops, as terrible as they are, said, no, we didn't. But they didn't say it at the time. That's the problem I have with the Ottawa cops. Well, one of the many problems I have with the Ottawa cops is Mendocino, at the time of the invocation of the Emergencies Act, is saying the Ottawa cops are asking for it, so we have to do it. The Ottawa cops never object at the time to the lie. It only comes out later on at committee hearings about the Emergencies Act that they never asked for it. They were in the media every single day. Why didn't they just say, no, we didn't actually ask for that. Please stop saying that. They never did. No. They provided cover to the Liberals. And so now that, that bromance is falling apart, that Steve Bell and Mendocino, they're falling out of love again. Mendocino's really dumb. It's really dumb. And I'm sure O'Regan's relieved that there are more vocal dumb people than him out there, because man, he's a dumb guy. And sorry, go ahead.
My Mendocino story, Sheila. The 2019 election, there was a candidates debate in his riding, and it was in a synagogue. And during the debate, the story broke in Time magazine about Trudeau blackface. And I went to query him about that right after the debate. He literally ran away. It was like, feet, do your stuff. He
just his little legs just pinwheeling away.
Like Scooby-Doo, right?
Yeah.
So that was my first encounter with this guy. Not impressive at all.
Who was that other Liberal MP that you confronted at the Walk for Israel? About? Yeah. I can't remember his name, but that was beautiful because his handler says, he's done
Levitt?
Talking. Yeah, Michael Levitt.
Yeah.
That's right. And his handler said, he's done talking, and you go in standard David Menzies form. Oh, okay. And then you continue to put the microphone in his face, and he just sort of turns. And every time I watch that video, I think about when my dog gets in trouble, and I'm like, did you get in the garbage? And my dog just turns and looks at the wall. Like they can't hear me. She can't hear me. I don't want to use the gender neutral pronouns for my dog, but Michael Levitt did exactly that when you're asking him about moving the embassy to Jerusalem, and he just turned and smiled blankly. It was the most awkward thing to watch. He couldn't
he
speak. He
could
didn't know what
not
to do.
even speak, and now he heads up the Canadian operation, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and this is
Odd, because he couldn't give a good answer about moving the embassy when he was asked.
My favorite encounter, back in the Sun News days, Sheila, there was a big display at Yonge Dundas Square. They had this huge inflatable seal, and it was an anti-seal hunt protest. And there was a Green candidate for Toronto, and she was there. And I said, but it's something like 30% of the sealers, when the seal hunt is in season, they're natives. Why would you want to make them unemployed? And she said, oh, well, if it's natives hunting seals, we would have an exemption for that. And my follow-up question, Sheila, was, oh, I see. So you're in favor of a race-based seal hunt. And the seconds ticked by to over a minute, and she turned to her handler, and she said something like, Judy, help me. All caught on camera. I wonder if that's still...
Oh, that's so great. We should find that. I call those people, those sorts of people, like, who are against energy projects or against logging, against, sealing. I call them advocates for Indigenous unemployment, because that's really what they are. They're not anti-anything. They're for Indigenous people being unemployed.
Unbelievable.
Okay, AMT60 gives us a buck and says, countries that have taken the guns of their citizens have then attacked their own citizens. Yeah, there's been, in 1 month, we've had 2 massive gun laws come in. And this comes on the heels of the arbitrary invocation of the Emergencies Act that allowed banks to just seize your assets just because of your political views. And David Menzies, you must pay attention. David Menzies has a big story today that's coming out about how, in other ways, very sinister ways, chilling ways, it's going to frighten you, about how the government cracked down on political dissidents. It is Venezuela style stuff. It is Russia, like KGB level stuff. It's what they do to political dissidents in Hong Kong. The Ontario government so far did this to Canadian citizens, and it is going to blow your mind.
It's a whopper.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. We got the tip from a lawyer who said he couldn't believe it, so he fact checked it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Alrighty, DRB1313 gives us $25. Boy, that's generous. Thank you so much. You don't need to go to Uvalde, Texas to look at what happened in Nova Scotia 2 years ago and read Paul Palango's 22 murders. The RCMP is a more political service than a police force. Yeah. That's one thing. Canadians are not paying close enough attention to the facts that are now coming out about what happened there and how the police, once again, when you needed them, they were too scared for themselves to help you. And
Yep.
I don't fault anybody for being, wanting to preserve their own life, but then don't go into policing.
Exactly.
Go do something else. Go, walk dogs for a living or something. Don't go into policing, because when you put on that uniform and you take a paycheck for that, you are signing a contract with society.
That's right.
That says that you are going to put your life on the line ahead of somebody else's. That's the deal. Becca Henderson gives us a buck. I've had many concussions. My mask exemption was not respected by my workplace, and I started to feel sick. Went to the ER and was told I had stroke-like symptoms because of the mask.
Ooh.
That's horrible.
That is.
That's horrible. I'm claustrophobic. I hate the masks. I hate them. I'm claustrophobic. I feel panicky.
But here's the deal. Where's that buzzword of the left? What's it called again? Oh, yes. Reasonable accommodation. Where was the reasonable accommodation for the Becca Hendersons of the world that were having health effects due to wearing that mask? It was zero. It was you're suspended without pay. There's your reasonable accommodation.
No, Becca Henderson is obviously a selfish grandma killer. Don't you know that? Becca Henderson, selfish grandma killer, also sends us another $1 and says, I tried to get a specific mask exemption for medical places, and my doctor said it would make people uncomfortable, not unsafe. Oh, so Becca has to sacrifice her medical safety for the feelings of other people. And by the way, irrational feelings of other people. She has to sacrifice her health because other people are experiencing TV-induced anxiety. What a world we live in.
And that doctor is in the field of medicine. He's more worried about people having their feelings hurt than he is of somebody's medical health.
Becca is his patient. Those other people are not his patients. He's supposed to be looking out for Becca. Again, that's how it works. If you don't want to look out for the health of your patients, don't go into medicine. Go do something else. Go be a cop, maybe.
No, those uncomfortable people don't need a doctor, Sheila. They need a psychiatrist.
I always say that. I'm like, no, you guys need a therapist. You don't need you don't need me to live my life how you want me to live. You need a therapist. Now, she also says her doctor said she needed to get the vaccine to qualify for a mask exemption.
Wow.
That's all the chats, I think, so far. Olivia, is that right? Yep. Okay, we're all done.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank Olivia and Isabel and Ephraim behind the board there. And, of course, my lovely co-host, Sheila Gunn-Reid, and all of you who contributed with a super chat. It's how we keep the lights on. There'll be 2 other Rebel News people here tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern. Sheila and I will be back on Thursday. I think we're also doing a live stream on Thursday for the Ontario election.
Oh, yeah. Right. Thursday is the day where Sheila does 11 hours of live TV. Yep. It's going to be great.
And loving it. In the meantime, as always, folks, stay sane.
What would your message be to firearms groups that are saying, this handgun ban continues to just target lawful gun owners, and it's similar criticism to other gun legislation saying it's not going to target people that are breaking the law anyways?
I think people need to be careful about misinformation and disinformation in this. We've explicitly and specifically not targeted law-abiding firearms owners because those who currently own and operate handguns safely and store them safely are not at all targeted by this legislation. We're simply saying that we are freezing the market, and in the future it'll not be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns in Canada. There have been too many tragedies. Canadians need to see safer communities, and this is a comprehensive, multi-step path towards that. Merci.